This is going to be a fun session. These three gentlemen who are sitting here are the crème de la crème of the German community and know-how and political connections who you can meet. And we are going to talk today a little bit about if the hype about Vietnam is overrated or is there some substance. So how about you introduce yourself first?
Thank you for this good introduction and pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation. My name is Peter Kompalla. I'm here for the 𝗟𝗀𝗃𝗴𝗏𝗺 Vietnam. It's I think in simple terms, it's something like an embassy for German businesses. And maybe to give you, related to the 30 years, a good impression of what it is and why it's necessary in Vietnam. When the first business delegations came here with Chancellor Kohl back then, beginning of the 90s, everyone was as excited as you must be now with the impressions you get from Vietnam. But what everyone realized, this ambition and excitement is not enough. At some point, you would need some kind of an intermediary, like some kind of advisor between both sides who helps to break into what we call the circle of trust of these networks here. And this would be us, this would be 𝗟𝗃𝗃𝗴𝗏𝗺 Vietnam, and this is what our team does here for 30 years. It's quite exciting and happy to share some more war stories. Thanks.
Thank you, Lars, for your very kind introduction, and I feel very lifted up. Actually, yes, we have been here a little bit to the end, but I think that Lars has been very, very kind in introducing us. My name is Martin. I'm the Group Commercial Director of the ANAM. Some of you have stayed the last days at our property in Mui Ne. I have some amazing feedback already from you, so I will pass on definitely the feedback to our team there. We operate luxury hotels here in Vietnam, currently 2 operations, and investing into 2 more properties, as well as a commercial center. I've been living and working here in Vietnam for more than 13 years now. Now on the board of the German Business Association for 4 years. I'm the vice chairman. Before that, I've been a couple of years in the board of the European Chamber of Commerce, and I was chairing for 5 years the tourism committee of the European Chamber of Commerce here in Vietnam. And I was as well the chair for 2 years of the Vietnam Business Forum as a very high level with the central government platform, and I was there also chairing the tourism committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Lars, for having me and having us here. I think it's a very interesting opportunity to talk about Vietnam. For myself, I'm the elected chairman of the German Business Association. So we are representing over 400 German companies, not just German companies, but over 400 companies, German companies and companies who are related to German business. And it's the number is already an interesting hint to the discussion today, because it's a very growing community. Not just on the Vietnamese side, but definitely also on the German investor side, which means definitely Vietnam is attractive. And on the other hand, if you're looking at the 400 members, we have also a lot of exciting formats. For example, tomorrow we are visiting the government of Quang Nam, the neighboring province of Da Nang City, and we'll talk a lot about daily challenges in operations. And that leads me also to the reason how I came to Vietnam. I used to live in China for 7 years and in Singapore for 2 years, so I have a fairly good experience in Asia, and I can compare Vietnam a little bit with other markets here. And I came here with the company called Viessmann. It's a very famous heating company in Germany. And what made this case so special is, first of all, I was involved from day one in setting up all the operations for sales and for manufacturing. So I had a really deep inlets in the whole licensing and all the challenges you have around that. But more importantly, we are addressing 2 things. We are addressing Vietnam as an export market, the classy model, but also we address Vietnam as the consumer market, because with 100 million people in Vietnam with a rising income, there's also a lot of potential here within the country. Now I just switched jobs. Now I'm working for a chemical company, which is also quite interesting actually. So there's a lot of movements in a lot of different sectors, and later we will deep dive a little bit more. But definitely quite exciting developments here in Vietnam at the moment.
Thank you, Alex. So, Vietnam is a big trading hub. But the big question we have is it a tiger economy or is it just a paper tiger? What do you think, Peter?
Definitely tiger, and tiger because of the long view. And maybe a fun fact that I told you this first business delegation coming here. They actually came from the German business community in Hong Kong. And I think things were going well in the beginning of the 90s, and they just wanted to go on an adventure. And then it was Vietnam or North Korea. And I think that shows you at this point, you know, it was a peer group of North Korea. And now look at it now. Look at what happened over the past 30 years. And then if you take this longer view, like our bet definitely is, if there's one country that can make it, which is a challenge, we'll discuss that. If there's one country that can make it to gain the productivity, to overcome the middle income trap, economists call it, it will be Vietnam for good reasons, but we'll look into that. So we are absolutely optimistic.
I mean, let's build on that, Peter, right? So definitely, we had a lot of developments again. Also, 𝗙𝗵𝗽𝗻𝗲 is now 30 years old, right? So there are 30 years of German expertise also here in the market, so there must be some attractive points. But if you look nowadays at the feedback we are getting from the members, the challenges mentioning on administration, on uncertainties, we will talk a little bit later about Trump, for example, right? Vietnam is also on a risk end, and this is the important point, also nowadays in the competition. Because it's not Vietnam anymore alone, right? You have Thailand here, you have Indonesia as a rising star. So when we look at the stage of Vietnam, we as a business association, we are quite engaged actually in also advising now Vietnam, what does it take to stay on the attractive path, and what does it also take to stay attractive for investors? Because this is happening right now. We have several companies who were looking into Vietnam, they were exploring it, and then they choose to go to Thailand, for example. Yeah, so this is also a fact we should definitely cover. For sure, today my role is a little bit to be a bit more critical. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Vietnam. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. But this definitely are points we need to also reflect. And looking at Vietnam in its all opportunity, for sure, it's a rising economy, but also a rising and growing economy has a challenge and the risk of a middle income trap, right? So that. For sure, at some point, the growth is not moving to a qualitative growth. If you look at, for me, the best example is still, if I look at the highways, new highways, all nice, but the rubbish left and right on the road is also still there, right? So that's the important factor now. Can Vietnam really move into the next stage of quality and qualitative growth?
Thank you, Alex. You mentioned Trump. Very hot topic here right now. Is Trump helping Vietnam, or is he a danger? Yeah. A lot of people here are super big fans of Trump. When he was elected the last time, he came here as one of the very first presidents, US presidents, and with his anti-China politics, that's definitely a positive impact. Also, wait a second, he's building his Trump Golf Resort in the north, and his buddy Elon Musk is moving the production here to Vietnam. So that looks quite positive, don't you think?
Yeah, but Lars, let us look also at the numbers, right? Vietnam is the country number 3 on the list when it comes to the trade deficit. Looking at the dependency on 30% of the exports are going to the US, right? And definitely there are people in the US government who are looking into this numbers as well. So I always say like that, right? So Trump, if he is waking up in the morning, he has an excellent spring roll for breakfast, he will love Vietnam and invest in Vietnam, and he will like keep his hands off. But if he gets a food poisoning from the spring roll, he might put Vietnam on the spot point.
Martin, you have been, Martin, you have been here the last time, right?
Yeah. Actually, I have been here from 2016 to 2020. And I remember during that time we had exactly the same discussions. It was a very similar situation. We had the same discussions. People are saying, oh, Trump is now in power, he will put up tariffs, and how will Vietnam will be affected. It turned out in his first administration that Vietnam was one of the main benefactors of that strategy. Mainly because after all the tariffs were put on China, a lot of the companies, they were diversifying out of China, and Vietnam was one of the prime destinations to diversify too. India was another one, and Indonesia and so on, but Vietnam really benefited tremendously. Secondly, what helped also Vietnam to, let's say, attract the business versus some other countries was how well Vietnam is, let's say, connected in terms of free trade agreements to Europe and to all kinds of countries. So Vietnam became a logical choice for a lot of companies who kind of wanted to China plus one or a little bit diversify away out of China. Then I think we already talked about that. What Vietnam did in the first administration, and I have seen that already now, is they have a very proactive and pragmatic approach to deal with the administration in the US. So for example, in order to, Alex mentioned it, the trade deficit. Actually, the trade deficit between Vietnam and the US is more than $100 billion. It's, I think, under the top 10. Vietnam is under the top 10 with the highest trade deficit to the US. So to address that in the first administration, they signed a lot of deals for LNGs. And there are LNG terminals being built in Hue, in Can Tho, and in different areas, where actually coal power plants already designed and built as coal power plants in the first Trump administration, then are repurposed for gas, for liquid gas energy power plants. And the idea is to bring the LNG from the US here to Vietnam, offsetting some of the trade deficit. Now, that didn't happen because of the Russia-Ukraine war and the huge hunger of European economies to consume the gas. That most of the gas produced in the US went actually to Europe. But now, what we have seen now with Trump administration 2.0 is that a lot of the business delegations, and by the way, the party secretary to Lam is now coming to Washington and so on, they actually already went to New York, to America. They already had discussions. We had the airline chairmen coming, so a couple of airlines will be bought or some commitments will be done. At the end of the day, to conclude that, I think Vietnam is in a strong position strategically and also from the history and where it is, to be a strategic partner rather than as some country that you want to assert certain kind of pressure in the system and try to put them down, especially to counter also China. So I think Vietnam will go through the next 4 years very well.
And
Alex,
let me just add the quick point. For sure, it's also for Vietnam an opportunity to diversify their trade dependencies, right? I think that is also something we urge the Vietnamese government to look into the European partners to also lower the dependency basically on the US side. But Peter, sorry, you wanted to...
So while we are in this conflict, Lars was planning to lean back as a moderator and have a neutral position, but you mentioned Thailand, and I think it would be nice if you maybe share some points on Thailand and take a position with Vietnam versus Thailand. No, but I can do that for you, and I think Martin already mentioned it. I don't want it to get lost, this, because you have a one-party communist state. And you wouldn't expect that, and I'm not exaggerating, that Vietnam is one of the most capitalist countries. And the reason is, there's hardly any country which opened up like this with these free trade agreements. And it's not only that we are almost Singapore has one too, but then in Southeast Asia, it's Vietnam and Singapore having a free trade agreement with Europe, which works very well. Like the entire world trade of Germany decreases 2024, except with Vietnam, it moves up 10%. It's a very strong partner, all thanks to this. But the interesting thing is, it's 50 more countries where Vietnam has free trade agreements. And that leads into the pragmatism with Trump and the US, and you'll see it with Russia and all conflicts in the world. Vietnam is very smart with something they call bamboo diplomacy. It's a very strong route. They know exactly where they'd like to go, which is prosperity and development of the country, and you see it over 30 years consistently. But at the same time, they, you know, this bamboo can be very flexible, very flexible. And I think this is happening. And one example to add what you said with LNG, I think was quite obvious. Maybe you would have flown more Airbus with Vietnam Airlines in future. If not, Boeing will now sell many more planes to Vietnam in order to rebalance the trade deficit. That's just one example where I think Trump also made a point already.
And I remember, so one of the most rich person in Vietnam is a woman, the founder of an airline called Vietjet. And she met with Trump the last time.
On the golf course.
Yes, and on the golf course. And she made a deal with him to buy the Boeing. And that's one of the reasons why Trump loved Vietnam, because he could go back to the US and could say like, oh, he made a deal. I sold 100 Boeings. I'm the greatest. And that's smart to act like that. Really incredibly smart.
And just to touch also one thing what Peter said, in terms of capitalist society, actually Vietnam, if you want to come here as a foreign company, you have ownership of your own company, we call FDI, by 100%. There are very few countries in Asia where you basically come as a foreigner to a country, you set up your own company, and you are, as a foreigner, 100% owner of your company. And also, there is a lot of good laws here protecting enterprise. So the law on enterprise, the law on corporation, the ownership of enterprise. Surprisingly, it's very, very easy to do. It's very easy to set up. It's easy to make business. Of course, there are some hurdles inside. We will discuss it maybe a little bit down. But overall, it's something very easy to do. And you do have people who are big invested here. Over there's my good friend, 𝗚𝘀𝗁𝗵𝗵, his DTEX. He did it in Canton, man. I tell you, I went there. It was opening of his company there. Amazing thing what he built there. You can ask him how difficult it was and to set up here a company and with the ownership. Or you have here Lars. So it is possible, definitely. Alex?
No, I think definitely, yeah. So Vietnam has a very favorable investment environment when it comes to enter the country, yeah. And I think AHK is also promoting it very well. And we had big company openings in the last few years of big names. I mean, 𝗟𝗁𝗁𝗏 is one of the very well-known German cleaning utility brands. 𝗚𝘀𝘁𝗴𝗏, yeah, the leading German heating company. So they're the big brands coming in. It's not like just some companies come in and try. Yeah, we have Mercedes here, they have a factory. So there is definitely something happening in this country. And if you look at also, and this brings me back to the trade topic, a lot of these companies have a very smart approach where they address the opportunities in the region. So they address the local market opportunities in the same time. And some of them have even global manufacturing lines. So I think German companies are a good example of qualitative investments here in the country along the whole value chain. The challenge, in my opinion, is less entering the country. The challenge is more when you're inside the country. So there are a lot of hurdles still in operating. And this is why we have, for example, tomorrow a business delegation in the province where 𝗟𝗁𝗏𝗏 is. In this province, there are huge problems with the customs. Yeah? So customs is there's always an issue with an import. There's always a question. There's always delays. And this is okay it's never okay, but this is fine for a company that has products that are not rotting. But imagine you're in the F&B business and customs is stopping your container, and your container is like stuck for 4 weeks. Good luck with the shipment afterwards, right? This is one example. Then international finance. So if you want to receive money from overseas, it's a huge documentation process still. A lot of companies are complaining and why can't I not flexibly receive money? Why do I need a complex paperwork to prove when I have a foreign customer who want to pay me? Just examples, right? And then also, for example, fire and security. There are a lot of this environmental license you need to run a manufacturing. You need the fire and security license to run a factory. And I guarantee you 9 of 10 German companies who manufacture here at least one time have a challenge with the authorities to get it in time. And there are several reasons, right? It's the inexperience within the teams, but it's also a lack of professionalism in the authorities for this specific subject. So what I want to say here is, like, it's not all bad. You will find the same issues in other markets. China used to be the same 30 years ago. But it's important once you start something here that you are aware there are this administrative and bureaucracy challenges in the country. And we urge the government also from GBA side to listen to us. Luckily, and this is the positive side, and then maybe we can also show some examples where it's improving. The government is in general here very open to listen. We have a lot of forums. They're interested in the feedback. For sure, not overnight everything is changing, but if I compare this with China, for example, where as a foreign investor, the government is inviting you once per year. They explain you what's the Communist Party, China Communist Party's strategy, and you as a foreign company who invests there have to follow. Here it's more like we ask for a meeting. They open up the door. They bring from each department a representative. For example, customs will also tomorrow be there, and they're listening to the challenges we have. But I want to raise awareness that these operational challenges are there. I think Frank and Niels, you also have like a lot of anecdotes with maybe with tax authorities, I believe, labor laws also sometimes very complicated. So for sure there are these topics, and I think these have to be addressed by the Vietnamese government urgently, because if it's not done, that is one of the challenges where Vietnam's growth story might slow down if the trust by foreign investors is slowing down, and if there is a competitive edge of other markets, if they are able to address it better.
But just a quick response, Alex. You know that on our desks we get all the serious cases when things go really south. Disputes over land ownership, the customs topic, and so on. And then together with the embassy, we try to talk to the government, find solutions. So you have 530 invested German companies. How many cases did I have over the past year? 5. And none of these cases super serious. And I know it from other countries. This is okay. And then something else, like on the solution side, I think there are these challenges. But when you look at the success stories, how did they get successful? I think it's always good partners. Like, you have challenges. How do you address them? Don't do it yourself. Look for good partners, and this is also something where GBA network helps tremendously. And I think lots of experienced company representatives like you, they know who to work with and how to work with them.
Thank you, Peter. Someone just sent me a gift by mail. I have no idea who. And the customs sent me a picture and said, like, I need to provide an invoice, what is in there and what's that. And because I don't know who sent me that, I have no idea what it is. And they will probably keep it, I guess. And I don't even know who to ask. So these are the small issues. But I came here for a reason. And the reason are the talent, the hungriness of the people, the attitude of the people, the way this country is growing. And we've discussed, we were sitting together before we had the session, and we were talking about what should we talk. And one of the points you brought up is that we believe that one of the reasons Vietnam is more successful than Germany, that there is no social jealousness, what we have in Germany. So if you have here a very big car, it costs you $1 million, people wouldn't say like, oh, rich guy, blah, blah, blah. They would be like, wow, this guy is successful. I want to be that person. I want to work harder to be that person. Whereas we in the West, if you show what you have, you get a lot of negative reaction.
Just for a quick one as well, a very nice example, because we discussed it. You also see it with the popularity of Trump in Vietnam. He's very popular because he's the guy who made it. You know, he's the and it's something where people have respect for. So it's.
I think there's something to do with that. Is that at the end of the day, if you want to survive here in Vietnam, you cannot rely on the government. The government will not go out and give you freebies and do anything for you. The government is here to create social order, to develop the country, but at the end of the day, everyone is still for themselves to create their own difference and create their own jobs and their own income here. And that, what happened, resulting out of that simple fact is the government does not do much for people, means that everyone becomes an entrepreneur. Everyone tries to make a difference in their own life. And it also means that the social network where someone is living, be it with a family, be it with friends, becomes very important. Because if tomorrow something happening to me, let's say I get sick or I need some support, I need to have a strong system of people supporting me around me. That still can be seen in Vietnam very strongly, that people are strongly embedded in their social environment. And if you call someone of your friends or family members, say, can you borrow me some money or can you drive me there? You will never hear someone saying, oh, sorry, I'm a little bit busy, or don't do that for me. So they have this very high helpfulness, I must say. And most important, I mentioned at the beginning, entrepreneurial mindset. Everyone wants to work hard here to make more money and to give their children a better future. And that's why, for example, education, if you rank all the different, expenditures of a family, for what would they spend expenditures first? Is it healthcare? Is it education? Is it travel? Is it buying things, a house, for example? Education by far is the very first point where the family always would spend most of the money for the children and for the family. And then at the bottom is maybe traveling, buying something nice, and so on. That means that in the focus of Vietnamese people, like Lars said, working hard, educating myself, developing myself, and making sure that the future generations have a better life than myself. And that is something you can feel. I think you have been here now a couple of days here in Vietnam. That kind of dynamicism and that kind of thinking you can feel and you can see here with the people.
When I came here 12 years ago, not many people spoke English. Especially, I'm not living in the expat bubble. I'm living in a very Vietnamese area. You could forget it. A lot of local shops. My wife and I, we were go shopping, no English. A few years later, we go in the same shops, they still don't speak English. But the mom was like, wait a second. And then like a 6-year-old child comes and translates and speaks English because she invested in the education of her daughter to learn English. So that's and thank you, Martin. One of the good example for that social network would be the typhoon Yagi. There was a very bad typhoon some time ago. A lot of people, 300 something, died. And for the non-Germans, we had roughly a little bit earlier a flood catastrophe in Germany, where also a lot of people died. And all our people, they look at the government and they look at other people helping them. And here, the people themselves resorted that.
I think Vietnam is full of bright talents. This is amazing. And to work with Vietnamese, you will feel a lot of positive energy. You will feel a lot of can-do mentality. I think, and this is a very corporate view, what is a little bit challenge sometimes in Vietnam is to retain talent because of this entrepreneurial mindset. The moment I feel like I can do it by myself, I quit and I do my own business, I can make more money. So that is a mindset. And it's also, if you look at the formal education, there are a lot of improvements. We have more and more international universities coming. And nowadays, the Vietnamese universities also link up more with private businesses and so on. But several years ago, it was still very lacking. And you still see this lack in the labor market. So which means you have an additional effort as a company to train the people. But again, if you give good, the team gives also good back, right? That means you need to invest in the training, you need to invest in retention, you need to also invest in culture because people are very flexible and open here and they see another better opportunity and they will jump. So I think that's just something I want to add on this angle. So if you're interested in building up something in Vietnam, that you put talent development, talent retention very up in your management priority list, that will help you to succeed here. And we have a lot of successful cases. We have also more and more private-public partnerships. We have, for example, the Vietnamese German University. That's a quite interesting project. We have on-the-job training by big companies like Bosch, who work together with, I think 𝗟𝗀𝗁𝗃 is also very strongly involved, actually. I should make advertisement for the 𝗟𝗃𝗁𝗃, where they really provide like German-style industrial training. Yeah? So there are a lot of different initiatives. But really, if you set up something here, be aware, talent need a certain level of management attention and investment, because the people are so open-minded and fast and active. And because they are hungry, yeah? Because they are hungry, you need to feed them.
Just a quick one, also related to the topic and what you said with Typhoon Yagi, you know, because looking in the future a little bit, I think lots of economists expect Taiwan or Korea. Also, it fits the mindset, the education value, the development. So this would be something, you know. The comparison doesn't work anymore because what happened in the world, you have more interruptions. And then, like Typhoon Yagi was not an exception. There will be heat waves, there will be tsunamis, there will be political, there will be challenges everywhere. But the interesting thing here is, you know, I think these people, they simply have this refusal to give up. It's like it doesn't shock them. It's like the next day, life goes on, and they build it up again, and again, and again, and again. And it's endless. And I think this is a massive strength, which is very valuable for everything what's ahead of us. And that's why, once again, I believe this question, tiger paper or tiger economy, definitely tiger economy.
And because also I think we are fairly advanced in the time, but that's always an advice I give to the German authorities. We had last year the federal president here, and I was also with Martin part of the briefing group when he came here to get insights from Vietnam. We had this last year also, a lot of state secretaries and so on. So there is a huge interest in Vietnam, and we always mention Germany can also learn something from Vietnam. It's not a one-way direction, because a lot of German delegations come here and are like, you know, we are from a developed country, we know the world, we can explain you what to do. But actually it's the opposite. We can learn a lot about entrepreneurship. We can learn a lot about positivity, a lot about resilience. I hope that we really use a forum like this here to exchange in both directions, and don't end up in one-way direction briefings and similar formats.
Thank you, Alex. So before we come to the questions, I want to add one last point, which is the secret superpower why Vietnam is so successful. It's actually the woman, the female power. So tomorrow is going to be a session with Verena, and I really, really urge you and invite you to listen, because she has some fellow EO members on stage, absolutely power women who are very successful. Female entrepreneurship is super large, a lot larger here than in Germany. There are many, many reasons, from society to mental mindset. I'll give you one example. You all have companies in Germany. If you hire a female employee, the first question is like, is she going to be pregnant? You hire her, and then she's like 1 or 2 years gone, and I need to keep the job. And there are, as an entrepreneur, these are questions. Here, if you are pregnant, you are gone for a couple of months at max, yeah? And then you work back to work. And why is that? Because there's a social network, there are the grandparents, but it's also a mindset of being successful and don't want to hold back and build your own dream.
I can speak from experience, because in my company, you know, we operate hotels and we have reservations departments, and we have a lot of young girls there. I think I have a woman-to-man ratio of 98% in my teams, 98% women, 2% men. And they do amazing work. They a really amazing job. And I tell you, they are young ladies in between 20 to 30. And I probably get every couple of months another, someone get pregnant. But very interesting in Vietnam, I was surprised. People, they work literally to Friday with a big belly, and this is fine. They have these special dresses. On Monday or on the weekend, they get the child, and a couple of weeks later, they're already back. And I'm like, how did they do that? First of all, how can they work so long with the belly? How can they work so long and then come so fast back? There's two reasons for that. Number one, Lars mentioned it. People are included in the social construct where often the grandparents will take care of the children, or the own parents will take care of the children, that's number one, or the uncle or the aunt or someone in the village or someone in the neighborhood will help the small children. So this mother who is bringing the bread home, the finance home, can continue to generate income. Secondly is that for these ladies, when they come back, children is not something seen as a lust, as something heavy in Vietnam. And sorry to say, when I saw Elon Musk with the little boy in the Oval Office, you can think whatever you think about Elon Musk. But when the little boy was running around in the Oval Office, I was thinking, it's nice, you know, having children running around should be something normal, right? Why is it something, at least in Germany, I always felt children should do their things here, here's the world of the adults, and that is work, and somehow we need to keep that different. I think here in Vietnam, there is somehow also a little bit of a different, you know, adoption to, it's okay to have children, it's nice, sometimes they run around, they make a little bit noise, but children are just part of society. And by the way, Vietnam has one of the highest fertility rates and one of the lowest average ages. Vietnam has a lot of young people. I think it's 14 years younger than in Germany, you know. So, and we should continue to encourage, and I'm very happy to have many, many children here in Vietnam because that is the future. No, I mean, we do that. I'm not Elon Musk, but what I'm trying to say is we as an employer, obviously we encourage that, we support that. So if we have people leaving our company because of maternity leave, we're very happy to take them back 1 time, 2 times. I even have one of my reservation supervisor, she got, in 3 years, she got 3 times pregnant, and every time she wanted to come back, we were very happy to have her back. So that's how an employer can support that.
Thank you, Martin. So we are a little bit over time, but we have time for questions, so please, Jesse, can you assist? There's a question. You need to...
With the amazing, I love the beard, I love it.
Well, let's see if you love the question as well. To the gentleman on the left, I've got a question. As a business, entrepreneur who moved to South Africa, before I opened the business there, I would have appreciated someone openly warning, you know, about like issues as you did. So you warned about bureaucracy. 2 questions. A, would you also warn Asian entrepreneurs about bureaucracy before they set up shop in Germany? Or what's your view on that? That's not really a serious question because, rather my experience was that I was suddenly opening a business in South Africa. I suddenly was faced with extortion, and which later, because I didn't pay the extortionists but told them to fuck themselves, I was faced with murder in my business. So I wonder if I was to, as you warned about no, you did not mention corruption, but you mentioned bureaucracy. So my question is there an issue with corruption or extortion here, or is it just bureaucracy that I would have to consider if opening shop?
Yeah, so for the first question, I always warn everyone in each direction, right? So definitely it has to be fair. So if you're looking at challenges, if you're coming here and let's say being transparent on topics like you mentioned, for us, and that is why we mention it so much, a good market entry depends also for entrepreneur on being good involved with people who are already successful here. I can tell you I never hear about the murder story from an European entrepreneur coming here. Yeah, it's definitely a very safe country from a physical health point of view. But for sure, I think it's less about the danger of really a danger. It's more about if you're not familiar with business practices, if you're not familiar with the regulations, you can run in regulatory traps. Yeah, so this is what I mean with bureaucracy. Like, okay, you maybe don't pay the right tax, or you don't pay your tax even you are supposed to be, and even you didn't know. Yeah, there can be tax for everything. So for sure you get a problem with the tax authorities, which you don't want to have, right? So a very practical question. So if you want to start something here, the best is stick to the community. Vietnam is for me outstanding from a foreign business community. You won't find a country where so many people will easily open up your door and will easily open up their experience and share openly what is happening. The challenge is, and this is a common mistake a lot of foreigners do when they come here, they talk to some consultants. What does the consultant do? They earn their money with the market entry. So they tell you only the good things. Even 𝗏𝗀𝗃 is sometimes a bit too positive. Yeah. So, but that's why if you have plans, connect with us. Yeah, and we can help you with our experience. We can connect you with the right people to ensure that you are not facing any murder threats in Vietnam. But jokes aside, it's a very, very safe country. I never hear about something like that, and I guarantee you you won't face it, despite you're maybe into drug smuggling.
We are non-profit. I just wanted to add that, right?
Yeah, let me add.
I mean, you must be you should change into politics, I would say, because you managed to answer for 3 minutes without using the word corruption or anything that could be later reflect badly on you for not representing
Randos,
Vietnam.
let me answer that. I'm not a politician.
Yes. Oh, and sorry, and I was a drug dealer in South Africa, but only with beer, so it was just hospitality.
Okay, so it's a really good question. Thank you for that. The kind of corruption you faced does not exist here. In 12 years, I've never had extortion or anything like that happen, period. Yes, is there corruption? Yes. Is the government addressing it? Yes. It's one of the rare countries where there is a death penalty on corruption from, I think, $200,000 onwards. If you would do that in Germany, a lot of our politicians would not be with us anymore. No, but seriously, and we shouldn't discuss moral. We are guests here. It's a different country. This is the way how the Vietnamese government deals with that. So corruption is in all over Asia an issue, I would say, but not in that case. So there's no extortion, there are no mafias, and as Alex said, it's probably one of the safest. It's definitely, Saigon is definitely a lot of safer than Berlin.
No, it's not black and white. I always think it's what's interesting to understand is it's not necessarily about an envelope of money, but it definitely is a business culture where favors matter. But favors can have a value of less than €10. But still, I think this is what needs to be understood. Favors matter. It's give and take. It's like trust. It's personal business.
Before we come to the next question, because some of you have been with us in Mui Nhi, and what you don't know, so we had police with us, Hanoi, and we invited them. They didn't do anything. They were just sitting there, had a good time, and we just like, come join, free party, free drinking, have a good time, and they were very grateful. And this is how it's running here. So we make sure, we didn't pay them. They had a good time, and they are looking at us favorable. As simple as that.
Okay, so a question that came to my mind was that you said about the mental of the people in Vietnam, that they want to also rise and also do their own thing at some point. So, okay, yeah, sorry. At the same point, I'm thinking if like there's European companies coming to here and also European businessmen, do you have a feeling like there's also some kind of feeling of competition inside of Vietnam with these people coming in from the outside, since Vietnamese people maybe want to do like their own thing and think like, okay, I have to now compete with those Europeans coming in and so on, if you understand what I mean?
It's a very good question. Actually, the Vietnamese labor law states that a company, if you want to have a foreigner, you must have a very strong case to hire an expat for that same position. So if you would find a Vietnamese person fulfilling the same job requirements, then you basically, the position of an expatriate to be hired would not be opened in the first place. So you need to make a case why you need to have that expat position. For example, language or cultural connection would be one, or similar cases, or expertise, technical skills, investor, whatever. And the second one is in terms of competition. If you look in Vietnam, it's 100 million people. I think the German community here alone maybe we have a few thousand. And there's a few thousands maybe from other European countries. There are very little foreigners living here in Vietnam, very, very few. And the Vietnamese government, they're putting a very strong check and balance on the inflow of foreigners in, especially for people from China, from India, from countries which have a very high population. So the approach from day one for the Vietnamese government was they want to have experts and investors and people who can bring a certain know-how and expertise and so on into the country. And that is most of the people who are here. And I think that the Vietnamese people in themselves, they always want to learn. They always want to develop themselves. And often it is the international director or the international manager who has a very unique management style, certain know-how, certain competencies, and that is rather appreciated and seen as a competition, in my view.
I mean, first of all, we are guests in the country. Yeah? Some of us stay longer, some of us for a short time. And during this time, for sure, the expectation from the Vietnamese side is we give something back. Yeah? This is very clear. And Martin, I think, explained very well the whole approach, how they do it from the labor regulations. On the other hand, and this is very important, I think it's a very European discussion we have on competition here in Vietnam. If you look really into and talk to the people and so on, it's a very welcoming culture. Yeah? So the moment you're here, it's a country with open arms and open minds, which is also one of the reasons why a lot of people don't want to leave once they entered, right? And I think Vietnam does a good job in balancing it out.
Some more questions? You need a difficult question. You did promise me some difficult question. Okay, we have a little bit of time left. So if you don't have any questions, what would be an area you would to learn more about in Vietnam? We have the experts here. This is a unique chance, and we should use it. What is a topic you would say, like, let's go a little bit deeper?
So last year I was also joining the NFQ event in Thailand, and there was a talk about that a lot of Asian countries are depending on China actually, and if China is getting or catching a cold or is sneezing, then it will have a huge impact, whatever it means, of different countries in Asia. So what does it mean for investors or someone who wants to found in Vietnam?
It's quite interesting because Vietnam recently went through a dip economy-wise from the growth perspective due to the slowdown in China. So it's a very imminent example of Vietnam's dependency on China. And there are several dependencies. Number one, Vietnam still exports also a lot to China. More importantly, Vietnam is very dependent on the Chinese supply chain. and a lot of also therefore consumer confidence is relying or relying on China. But, and this is what again amazes me about Vietnam, the reaction was quite fast. So last year when it really like the macroeconomic numbers beginning of the year were very down, the Prime Minister invited also asked for commenting on ideas and so on. And we mentioned one fact, everyone, all the European chambers, the Americans and so on, you need to diversify yourself and you need to lower the reliance on China by partnering up with us. And you see it, right? Vietnam is, for example, on Sunday we have another summit with the Prime Minister where he prioritized the European chambers and he asked basically on, okay, how can we cooperate further? How can we do it? So Vietnam over the last year started to address it in several areas. You see it with more and more business delegations also going, also under Th Lam now, under the new party head and country leader going to the Western countries. But also India, they have now more exchange. So I think it's a very important fact that Vietnam definitely needs to lower the dependency. It will not come overnight, but with all the investments we also see, for example, in the industrial sectors, more and more supply, also with, you know, for example, for critical components in automotive and so on, can be nowadays produced in Vietnam or in ASEAN. So in the region without China. And I think this trend will continue because also China is getting more expensive, less competitive when it comes to especially manufacturing, also to sourcing. And the risk is inevitable with Trump. And every company is pushing to lower the made in China components because if you, to put made in Vietnam on your product, you need to have a certain grade of local produced content. And that means you try to kick out everything that is not made in Vietnam as soon as possible from your parts in the product. And I think that will speed up for Vietnam. So risk assessment is correct, but Vietnam is on track, in my opinion, to fix it.
And just to talk about the China and give a number, actually China is the only country for Vietnam which has a negative trade deficit. Actually quite huge. So the highest trade is between China and Vietnam. But funny enough, Vietnam is so hungry for Chinese components and materials that they're running on a negative trade deficit. Where Vietnam actually makes a lot of money in the positive sense is with Europe, with Australia, with the US. That's where they are selling their products to. So the interesting question is for Vietnam, you know, how long do I need China in the future to produce these components which are still produced in China, and how much of the supply chain is being moved out of China here to Vietnam? And what is at the moment, you know, why does Vietnam have such a high outbound surplus? Because of the goods which are produced here, often electronic goods. Samsung has 70% of their worldwide production is here in Vietnam, Samsung. They have huge research and developments. You have Foxconn, you have Apple just recently moving here, producing new products. And when they move here, all this supply chain also will move here. So I think that the dependencies, while still very strong on China relying especially for bringing materials in, it will get less and less in the future. And there's one thing China doesn't have, what Vietnam has, is free trade agreements. Vietnam has free trade agreements with Europe, with India, with Russia, with Korea, with everyone. There's only one country in all of Southeast Asia, not with more, but with the same amount of free trade agreements, and that is Singapore. There's no other country in Southeast Asia with as many free trade agreements as Vietnam has. And we know all how well is Singapore doing in terms of trade. Vietnam has exactly the same number of free trade agreements. That's how strong Vietnam is connected.
No, it's a very good question. There are a few more. It's a very complex relationship, by the way, with China. Maybe we can go deeper afterwards, also some topics, because I'd actually like to take the time now. You made me think, what are the topics we are, where we're still open thinking what is coming. And that's something to share. I know there are a few company representatives here with some experience. The future, we believe, is in a more, it's in new management techniques, in new organizational structures, which is still, we are in a phase where it's very process-oriented, which works quite well. But I think, like, one question would be, what is AI doing in a country where you have high process orientation, also automation? Like, maybe back to you, this question. Where do you see this heading?
Probably this is a question we can answer with when Frank is going to be with me tomorrow on stage, because he has, what is it, 800 employees doing manual scanning and digitalization, and is working actively on replacing that with AI. Yeah? Other than that, AI is a large factor here in the startup scene. There are a lot of very impressive AI startups. When I came here 12 years ago, now speaking from the startup experience, not corporate, the investment rounds were very small. If a startup would get $50,000, that was a lot. Yeah? I remember the days when I was really stunned. Now, for sure, Vietnam is still by far not on the level of Germany. We need to be very clear here. Yeah? But we have left and right 100, 200 million rounds. Yeah? One of the companies I wanted to bring to the summit was 𝗟𝗶H, which is an NFT game startup, and they got a couple of 100 millions by Andreessen Horowitz, but they are a little bit shy in the public because they lost a lot of money. They got hacked, interestingly, probably by North Korean hackers. So their money funded the North Korean military development. This is the world in which we are living. Yeah, that the state funds hackers to get money for buying rockets. It's crazy. It's like the future. Michael, you had another topic.
So originally I had the very same question. Now I have a different one. Peter, you mentioned that there is metrics that show that Vietnam might avoid the middle income trap. Now, if we look at the GDP per capita, we still can triple or quadruple until Vietnam is in the middle income range, right? But what metrics do you see today that it might be avoid and go through and become the next Japan or something like that?
This is a very good question. It's still a low level, but what you have a set of different metrics where, again, the one that matters most are the soft factors. But even if you look at let's say, usual metrics, 10 years net growth over all indicators you have in an economy. And then some of you might know there's an official plan of the Vietnamese government, net zero until 2050, industrialized nation, high income until 2045. So imagine that there would be like 8 or 9% GDP growth every year, and then at the same time you want to decarbonize. So this is quite a challenge. And there we would say this is a challenge, maybe it will not get there, but what you will see is 7-8% every year is possible. It's not that we calculate it, it's like you go through major independent research institutes and they say this is possible with the framework which is currently set by the Vietnamese government.
Per capita? Per capita?
For the GDP growth, but if you have it annually without a crisis, then calculate yourself. Like, you know, it doubles very fast, and then also demography, we discussed it, is declining a little bit. Lots of Vietnamese are also going abroad, so all these things together, it's moving up very fast.
I think we need also to look at the qualitative factors in the way can the inefficiencies we still have in the government be reduced, right? I think that will help us to indicate a little bit, is the country on the right track? But, and this is the advertisement block, we have next week, Monday evening, actually our monthly business meeting as a GBA. So you should come because we have an economist from UOB, from United Nations, and from EY, and they all three will give us outlook scenarios how Vietnam will develop. And there you should ask the same question again, and I believe they will have 3 very smart and hopefully different answers because they all come from a different angle. That is advertisement block finish.
Thank you, Alex. So we have one last question, then we need to finish up. Then we have time out. So Judith.
Hi. Actually, I don't know if this is a critical question, but I have an open question. If a fairy godmother would show up and you had one wish that would happen, what was the one wish you have as a German businessman in Vietnam that would change then immediately?
Thank you. That's a good question. So I think we all can answer that. Who wanna first? I can do first if you need to think. I have an easy answer. I would love if the traffic laws are back to where they were last year, because the new Prime Minister increased the fines for traffic violations dramatically on a level which is substantially higher than Germany. And give that with the low income, it's really scary. And so that means suddenly people really follow the traffic laws. However, the infrastructure is not yet that. So there is, from one day to another, the commute takes like 20–30% longer on the same so I hate it. That would be my wish.
I would love if there would be a bigger sense for also keeping common ground clean. So for me, Vietnam, I mean, everyone looks after his or her own backyard, and they do it very well. But if I look in public spaces like streets, especially on the highways and so on, the amount of waste is a disgusting thing for this country. This country is beautiful, developing and so on, and what you still find on really like rubbish on the street. I always hope I have a ticket, like a final ticket out. I would use on my last meeting with the government, I would use a big speech about rubbish on the roads and how awful it is and how smelly it is, and that this needs to be addressed because a country that want to be like 2045, like a high-income country, also should be a clean and well-smelling country.
I like the question, thinking all the time. But maybe the one thing, it's. I think the main challenge we have is the German and the Vietnamese business culture they couldn't be more different. It's very different. And the main wish would be let's take the best from both worlds and combine it. It would, like the sky's the limit.
Martin, you have a wish?
I don't know. I don't really have a wish, No.
No wish, everything.
No, I mean, of course, you can talk about, documents stuck in certifications stuck with the government because the politicians they're afraid to make decisions because of anti-corruption drive and so on. But honestly, and perhaps I have to make that point. We have seen in the last year, and similar to China, a high anti-corruption drive here, led by the party leadership. And what has happened is that not only one, but two presidents and a couple of prime ministers and ministers and so on were basically, had to leave. And a lot of, even more of provincial chairmen and provincial directors and so on, they had to step down from their post because of irregularities. This has led to almost a blockage of papers. So whenever you do a new application, let's say for land or investment, no one wanted to touch it because people were afraid to make a mistake. Now, usually, why are people afraid to make a mistake? It's a yes or no. You just follow the law and then there will be no mistake. The problem is in Vietnam, there's a lot of so-called gray areas. So you can make a mistake you can make a mistake by following the law because the law is not 100% clear of how this should be defined. So the so-called gray areas and where basically now it holds back people making a decision has slowed down in the last year massively a lot of the, let's say, a decision-making process. now with the new leadership and the new party secretary now in place, he's now moving fast to remove we call this bottlenecks. He's moving fast to remove that. We have also seen that the anti-corruption drive has slowed down. It's basically now, let's say, over more or less. But more important is he's doing some changing of ministries. So he's merging a lot of the ministries now at the moment here. So if you ask me, what is to be changed in this one single thing is, get back to business, let companies do their business, and I hope the Vietnamese government can finish their internal things sorted out so business can make business again. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. This was a good closing word. Thank you all, and thank you, gentlemen, for attending this session.
It was fun. Thank you.